Hola and welcome to Josef's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you so much as always for joining me. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You don't need to worry about liking, following or subscribing to any of the videos I put out there. I just put them out there where I can and have a holly jolly great time doing so. Now, in today's video, I'd just like to take a little moment here. One of my top 3 all-time favourite comedies happens to be a British comedy called Open All Hours. And yes, I'm aware there was a sequel made to it, still Open All Hours. But I'm mostly focusing on the original one for the most part. I love the comedy because we have this cozy little shop, and for all the challenges that it presents, there is some sense of feeling right at home. Don't know why and I don't know how. Now, speaking of the Open All Hours, that is its own little situation we're going to be doing somewhere else. In the meantime, though, there is only so much space that permits on this particular layout, because for those of you that haven't quite figured it out, why is it built the way it's built? It's very close to the wall. I mean, we're only coming out about ½ a metre off the wall for 2 return lines to be going. So we have a pretty condensed amount of scenery. So that gets me becoming a little bit creative in the scenes we see. And I think that was very evident in the Radio Control Club circuit that we built over near Noodle Knocker Junction. And there's a link to it somewhere in this vicinity. But I have this little section near the canal, Percival's Landing. Of course, I'm giving a bit away there, but we'll come back to a bit more about that section of the layout later on. And particularly with what we're up to in this video. Look, the scene itself, which I am going to share where it's going to live, hasn't finished being developed just yet. And that's because the whole petroleum depot canal side and the locomotive maintenance shed there and the signal box, this whole situation is sort of being built all as one. And I don't want to give too much away because all those scenes are going to start developing as we carry on. But in this instance, we obviously need to make the actual building itself. So this video, we're just going to focus on that. You did see a little bit of a snapshot in the previous video where I was talking to you about the wonderful world of what AI can do for you. But in this video, I just want to go through the process of how we built our little shop that is inspired by the Open All Hours shop. There's something where you see a lot of signage on it. There's something cozy about it. It might not be the most modern, the best location and all the rest. Of course, location will make sense as I keep going. But I just want to share with you how I took what is basically a wonderful model kit from Artitec, and then I've personalized and modified it with my own Josef magic that I always do. And for certainly family members and other key members from Australia that will be following this particular journey, this video will really tick a few boxes for you and how I've really turned it into basically my own little operation. So as always, let's grab the popcorn and dive into the build. I know I always say it's going to be a short one, so I might just give up on that. The footage is pretty good and I've certainly condensed it as much as I can. So let's get stuck in now and see how I created the batter up Chippy box. Right, let us get started with the voiceover. I know many of us don't like it and some don't like the music, but here we are, and once again we'll go through the build process. As you can see, here is our magnificent kit that we've got. Some assembly required goes without saying. It's not that there's a lot of assembly per se. It's mostly to do with the fact that you're going to have to do a bit of painting. Of course, we've got some tremendous decals, but that's more for the Deutschland European type of looking thing. And while some of those brands are global and we can get away with being on such a small image, I still think we can do just a little bit better. So let's dive in.
Let's kick it off now with a true blue Aussie comedy called Takeaway, featuring the likes of 2 very Australian takeaway shops in 2 different styles. The one on the left is the more traditional Trev's Takeaway, and of course on the right hand side we have Tony's, which is the slightly more what you might see in a lot of places at the moment. The place where they don't just wrap it all up in paper like they used to, which is a bit of a shame. They put it in like a wax type of box and then slide it into a bag, to which I'm always the customer that's insisting, no, I want it all in paper and wrap it up. The movie just goes along in the situation that a major fast food operation opens beside them, and of course they work together to try and bring it down. It's a great look, but there's a scene in the movie. Trev comes in with his sign out the front in the morning, and he introduces us to dim sim on a stick, which he insists will be the new taste sensation, to which Tony will quickly dress him down, saying, "You're dreaming, time to pack up and go." Needless to say, I just thought that sign was kind of iconic, and I thought I needed to create something like that. So, of course, as per the previous episode, we wandered over to the world of AI, and I was basically asking it to create a sign for me, which was basically just to show a chalkboard with a stick and a dim sim on it saying today's special. Well, the ironic thing is the AI did do wonderful stuff for us, and as you can see in these images, the AI did generate some wonderful imagery that we have obviously taken, but if you look here, it did want to show us a representation of the traditional dim sim that would be found in other parts of the world. The Australian style wasn't necessarily there. And what is the Australian style dim sim? Well, you can see that right here. It's kind of got this more of an oval shape to it, a little more of a substantial size. Steamed or deep fried, it doesn't really matter. They're all winners. And in which case, this is where I just took a bit of creative genius and used the markup tool on a Mac and just added some white to try and shape it myself. It's not perfect, but that's how we've ended up here today. Just sticking with the AI for a moment, obviously it goes without saying, as you saw in the previous demonstration, I wanted to create the name of this particular little takeaway or convenience store called the Batter Up Chippy Box, and I wanted to say batter up with the text written across a baseball bat. I thought it was a clever play on words. And in which case, there is no way I could have successfully have done that without the aid of our wonderful AI. Right, so we have our tremendous name and sign for the shop now. The next thing I'm just going to quickly whiz by now, I won't go into too much detail, is the iconic imagery that would certainly be found in Australia at many shops. As you can see, the Streets brand for your paddle pops and cornettos and ice creams. I managed to dig up the original 80s version of it. I also managed to find a more rusted and distressed version that I obviously used on the side of the building. Classic ice blocks and ice creams here in Australia, needless without saying, the Bubble Bill is truly iconic, and of course the Scribbler, one of my favourites from the 80s. Of course now we've made way for things like your Magnums, and yet the paddle pop is still there, although they have changed core ingredients. We also see other popular brands. Of course, Coca Cola goes without saying, up to and including we also have Bundaberg brewed ginger beer, which is a very popular drink up here. The iconic CHIKO roll, born in Bendigo. There's no greater snack in your hand to have. And of course, anyone that knows about the search for the Chico girl on the motorbike, well, that's an Australian thing you need to know about. Nibble Nobbys Nuts, and of course Smith's chips. They're the popular snacks we like to have, and a corner shop wouldn't be complete, as I certainly grew up getting $1 worth of mixed lollies, which made you feel like you were the king of the world. As a result, here's just a little bit of footage of basically experience where they would go behind the counter and dip their hands in and grab some lollies from each different one to have them all mixed up in your little bag, to which you ate and never once thought about how hygienic it was. Also, regarding my sign for mixed lollies, I'm just paying a little homage and a tribute to one of the wonderful toffees, the Pascal's Columbines, and that's why I just took the iconic blue and pink that their packaging was found in. They no longer now make this toffee, and I thought it looked quite good there on my mixed lolly sign, again AI generated. Looking toward our fine bakers that we have, and whether it be Balfour's, Villiers, or in my case Gibbs, which was a bakery that was in South Australia that is no longer operating, but the iconic orange and yellow really do pop in this image I'm trying to create. And the bakery was quite busy in the 80s. It certainly provided my school canteen. And of course the Mountain Dew sign, which of course that is the more modern version. And as I've discussed before, it's a wonderful drink that, of course, is actually illegal in other parts of the world, like Europe. In the meantime, though, that's going to become a little more interesting because we're going to see further development of how that sign actually cements into the layout with something else that I'm building that will be unveiled in a few videos' time. The final sign, which was a little bit of a late addition, is a sign that is actually still on a wall today, thanks to my brother, who managed to drive past and get the image. Now, this image has probably been on that wall, easily since the 70s and is still there today. And while some's been painted over and the addition of an air conditioning unit is sitting there, Leeds Lemonade, which was then of course replaced by our Sprite Lemonade that you all know now, Fanta, we obviously have the Coca Cola, and this was for a chicken shop in Whyalla, South Australia. It still is a takeaway shop, I believe, but that signage in the laneway is there, and it's because it's in a laneway facing south, which means it never gets any direct sun. And I like to think if some of my artwork live a rich life like that and still be standing, we're doing just fine. So I won't bore you with too much of the painting. I've never professed to be much of a quality painter at the best of times, but you can see just daubing a few bits of colour on the items inside isn't a bad way to go. Now, just regarding those stripes trying to resemble the CHIKO ROLL type of brand there, I would have been better digitally printing something. That'll just came about in the simple fact that you're really not going to see it, and I had excess paint on the brush, and I thought, we'll just brush it along, and it can't be a bad thing. So as you can see, try to paint those Mountain Dew bottles there. We're also going to illuminate it, drill a neat little hole in here, and we're going to wire up the Woodland Scenics Just Plug light. I'll just attach one of the ones on the inside and the little gooseneck lamp on the outside. I think it should do quite well, and we're just going to have to maybe do a little bit of sealing it up with some putty to minimize the light bleed. Now, doing the signs, and this goes for any of the signs you've seen on the layout, I just use Microsoft Word. No fancy programs here. I just do a quick Google search for basically what it is that I'm looking for. And then once I just find it, I'll usually just copy the image, and then I'll just drag it into Microsoft Word. Once it's there, as you can see, before I do anything, even before I resize it, generally you just want to click on it and you want to select the option to say send to back or bring to forward. That way you can move it wherever you want on the page. Then we can just pick up in the top right hand corner and bring it a bit smaller as we need to. If we need to do a bit of additional cropping as seen here, just click on the image once, and in the latest version you'll see a little box to say crop, and then you can use the little black tabs and drag it in accordingly. Once we have it where we need it, at that point, if you need to do any other modifications, so be it. But pretty much what I need to do is get the sizing of it in the right way. And generally everything here in Australia, we obviously use centimetres and millimetres. We use the metric system. So as a result, what we're going to do is if you just come into Word, what you can do, and we head over to View, you can switch on the grid lines. Now, don't worry too much. The grid lines are not going to turn up when you hit print. They're just there for your reference. What's really good about these grid lines is they are 0.25 centimeters. So four of these little squares will give you a perfect 1 centimeter. Now, in this particular application, the petrol pump I'm doing is exactly 1 centimeter, the base bit I need to work on. But you'll see often I will occasionally resize some slightly bigger, slightly smaller, because I know I've got to snip them out, and it just gives me a bit of tolerance. Remember, some that are a little bit bigger are always going to work in your favor, because you can always trim the edges down, and where it's a nice neutral green in the background there, well, that makes for easy going. Then it's just a simple matter of additionally dropping all the rest of the images you may have collected for a project, sizing them up and down as needed, and away you go. Of course, with the diesel BP and the price tag there, I did take a slightly bit of additional time where I actually jumped over to a Mac and I just used Preview, where I can just create a few shapes in different shades of color and impose the text in the font I want to make those numbers. But it's nice and simple, and you all have the tools without paying any money for them. So as you can see, the kit obviously does come with the traditional type of decals, and that's good, but obviously we're not in the Deutsch German at the moment, so we've just created our own, and obviously I just printed them out in black and white. I just have a monochrome laser printer, and as a result, I just printed them out just to make sure I've got the sizing just right. Again, I've just done it all in Word. Again, if you're using Microsoft Word, there's some great tips. One is to turn on the grid. We obviously use centimeters. I make sure it's centimeters, and everything I'm basically working on is 0.25, half, 0.75, and 1 centimeter on that grid spacing, so you can quickly size up as you need. I then obviously went along and took it to somewhere that has a printer that's worth thousands of dollars that prints it for me, and here's what we've got. I printed it both on a paper for some thinner stuff and of course on a 200 GSM card. bit like creating Arkwright's store. And you can see how I added that little bit of extra color there on the cash register. Not that you're really going to get to see any of that by the time that roof and canopy come on. Still, we will continue. Note there is a Streets logo there, even though it to be. And this one also features the Scribbler and the Bubble-O Bill. Very iconic ice creams you'd find in Australia anyway, and I'm sure the rest of the world. Mountain Dew, a wonderful drink, although it is banned in Europe for those of you that weren't aware. Those of us lucky enough to live in Australia and North America and places like that. It's banned because it contains this bio something, and apparently it can cause memory loss or something like that. I can't quite remember. Anyway, that's basically what I'm trying to create here, are Mountain Dew bottles right here on the counter there. Now come on, look at how small that sign is. Come on, AI, why can't you do this bit for me? This is way too small.
Little blue, why do they call you Little Blue? Playing in his bath a summer was due. He bit his mummy's fountain pen and broke it in two. The ink it squirted in the water, wow. His mummy has a blue boy now. They scrubbed and rubbed, he cried and kicked up a din. The more they washed it off, the more it washed in. He cried, oh mummy, mummy, what shall I do? I'll have to stay a little blue.
So the last of these signs is now starting to go on, and it's one of those situations where I honestly think less is more, but they are some key signs and significant to me, so doing what we can. Just regarding the mixed lollies, the A-frame that we've created, I just want to talk about that. So that's just printed on 200 GSM card, which is what we've used, as you can see with some of the other logos there. And just some careful time scissoring it out, and just to create a little bit of a stand in the back there, because as you know, the one that came with the kit is completely freestanding because it's just a little bit of etched brass or metal or whatever bent. I just took a bit of the scrap plastic that actually came from the substation and what was the sprue, and cut it down. And then if you look carefully, you'll see it down in there on an angle. Just cut a fraction shorter so you can't see it from either side. It's just been glued down, dab of PVA glue. And I think we're going to be all right with this. Now, I'm well aware I just said less is more, but we've come this far and it's not going to stop now. This is getting a bit over the top. I'm going to add an air conditioning unit to it. Now, of course, you might think just a standard split system like this would look good on the side. There's nowhere for it to be, and I'm actually going to use a dual system, and I like to think that it's still a single unit inside, but it would probably be under ceiling hang. We don't really have room for a cassette in there. Maybe we could justify enough room for a 4-duct system. There'll be an extraction system, but I think an underhang might just be exactly what we'd be doing, as seen here. As you know, I've spoken many times about this wonderful operation here, and I've used these packs before, as seen at the Noodle Knocker Junction signal box, and or over at the cricket club, and indeed over at the station, although that video hasn't been done yet, so I'm not unveiling that just yet. The kit's exceptionally simple to put together. It's just a little bit of timber, and you're just snipping up the paper, folding and gluing it together. But as always, I'm going to take it just an extra notch further on this application. So we've assembled the air conditioner, as you can see. Now it's being weighted down, and if you think it's on a little bit of an angle, well, you'd be 100% right. And if you look carefully underneath, there's just a little bit of folded up card. It's just a little bit of the grey offcut from when we cut the signs folded up, because obviously the roof is on a slight slant, and as a result, when we sit it there, we want to keep it level as they do in real life. And because it's going to be such a large unit mounted onto the roof, as seen locally here, they'll usually use some aluminium supports on either side so it can't sort of wobble and fall over. So we're going to attach that, and then we're going to bend a bit of plastic in for the pipe work that would lead into the building. Here is our standard hookup wire, and I think as you look at it compared to the unit, it's just a bit too big. So we've just gone down a scale smaller, and I think we'll get a slightly better result from using that. So just keep going till you think it looks right. We'll see what we can do here. As you can see, the air conditioning unit has been laid down, and I've put a slight angle on it because that roof is tilted, as you can probably see in the profile of the side of the building here. If you look carefully as well, your angle, you might just spot the little piece of insulation that I've laid down for what would be both the electrical, which wasn't so bad when I did strip the red and black. As you can see, the black leaves a bit of residue with this particular type of cable. It's not clean, so there's that bit of red fleck to it, which kind of doesn't work too bad, because generally you're going to have the copper pipes wrapped in their insulation, white and or black, and of course then you've got the electrical feed going in, and of course the blue interconnect, or depending on what country you're using. So I think the little extra texture probably isn't too bad. And as you can see in a quick picture here, I actually additionally wrap my cables in an extra piece of corrugate just to provide UV protection. There's nothing worse than just seeing exposed copper pipes. Now we've just taken an exceptionally thin piece of styrene rod here. I think this is the 0.5 mil or something like that. And I've just given it a really quick lick of silver paint there, just to give us the sort of structural supports we need. And we're now going to fit them into place. It's a shame because they are the tweezers I like to do the most with, but they're just on the right angle to hold that while it's drying. Dip either end into some glue. I figure I can just trim the excess as needed. Just quickly, if it looks like I'm having some trouble, just pointing out the profile at the end of these particular tweezers. It's not a flat, it's got a hook in it, as you can see, and they're really useful for some things, but in this particular application they're a darn right nuisance. Again, sitting down to model this work is a lot better. I'm actually standing on my tippy toes here, and I'm certainly not the steadiest of people at the best of times. When I say sit down is one of my #1 tips mentioned in an earlier video. I am not joking at all. I trimmed the top of that, and it had to land right there. There we go. It's not too bad. That other stanchion could be back further. The front ones look not too bad. I'm not too happy with that. And I think if we just come around on that closer one, while the glue's still drying, I think you can definitely pick up the colour, certainly, which will be seen from the front on that little piece of our connection into the building. I think that really is good detail. Have we gone too far? Probably. I also like the fact that they've pre-done a little bit of the rust at the top of the unit as well, so I think that's not too bad at all. No, you didn't miss anything. The little hamburger is actually just a keyring. In fact, if you look very carefully, you can still see the original hole where I unscrewed the keyring section out. You'll also know it's just lifted up, and of course it's just an excess piece of pipe from the petroleum depot that was just cut to size, but again, it's had a slight bit of an angle put onto it, and I think the result isn't too bad. That nice little bit of elevation underneath it, if you're standing under it, looks fantastic. I'll leave this to dry. I don't want to disturb that anymore. And also, while the glue is dried, here is our mixed lollies sign. Again, having your employee go out every day to put this heavy sign out, all to make $1, seems a bit tricky, but again, it's more nostalgic, and I'm pretty happy with this, and I know there's someone that'll be watching that'll take great happiness in seeing something like that, so I hope you enjoy. So while all that's gluing, the chairs and tables that came with the kit aren't really cutting the mustard for me, so I thought just something happy that would be spread around for people to have some dinner, to have a spot of lunch in the shade outside. Will make a nice scene out there, and we'll be using one of these Metcalf laser cut kits here. Not too sure what we can expect at the moment, but let's get stuck into it. And our umbrella designs, to which the colours of South Sydney here. May not be the biggest football fan, but what I can tell you is I absolutely do love the red and green together. I always thought it always looked good, so I'll be sure to make sure we're going to definitely be using that shade there, and the rest we'll see what we come up with as we go. Instructions are pretty much as we did when we were building our fish and chip scene down at the coastal side. We just glue a few bits together and we've got our chairs and tables. I know it's getting far too long, but we better make sure we get it all completed. Our little tables and chairs, as you'll recall, once we've put the kits together, they do look not too bad just as the way they are, but we do want to add a little bit of texturing and weathering to it accordingly. Now, these are still yet to dry, but I thought I'd go through the process. I really don't do much at all. One thing I always talk about using my model washes, I use the dark grey and I use the light grey. I want to use the light grey in this one. Just taking a little bit of a water-based paint with a drop of water in it, and I usually just add a little splash of this to it to give it the liquid build-up as well. I'm just going to use a brown, and we can shade these a little bit later as needed. But the whole idea is just get your brush in and slap it down. Like literally just get that stuff in there. Don't worry too much about this. We can tidy this up a little bit later. Let's just get something in just to add a little bit of colour bleeding through the MDF at the moment. And just when you're thinking to yourself, yeah, it's not really too bad, it's going to start drying before you know it, get in underneath, another quick drop and get in. It's about the edges is basically what I'm chasing in here. The underside of the table is not that important, but while you're there, just any loose brush will do. Don't worry, there'll be some bits that are going to come through and you'll say, hey, it's not sticking. That'll probably be where the glue is. I'm not too worried about that. And that's the story. Let's leave them to dry a bit. The round one we started earlier, and you can see it's starting to dry at the moment. It's not quite as heavy as the other ones were. So now just taking a drop of water and adding it into that light wash just to really thin it out. Going to take one of our umbrellas now. Take a little bit of, get some of your wash onto the brush. Take a little bit off with your paper towel. Grab one of our umbrellas here. And pretty much from the inside, just lightly, not too much. But you see what's actually happening is you want to really be as light as you can almost dust it on really, really lightly. We don't want a lot of moisture. If I took a fine brush, I'd probably worry about getting the detail onto the seams of each one. But what's actually going to happen is if you now look, it's actually just gently started bleeding through the other side on the paper. And that's all I want to do, just to get that texture on it neat and even. And I think that's really a good way to just take that instant sheen of the paper off. And I think you can see now, just particularly just down the bottom there, that's pretty much the image we're trying to go for on these Brollies here. So you can just see it does sort of, it'll bleed through. You don't need to come in on the top side. Just a nice dust on the bottom. And you should get some really, really nice results from that. So this is kind of the effect I'm going for. And this isn't too bad. I didn't want this striping that's happened here. That was just, it went on just a little bit wet. So start off not too wet and just work your way through till you get a look that you're kind of looking for. But to be honest, this is kind of nice and soft. And again, if the umbrella was sitting into the scene, pitched on a slight angle, this looks a little more appealing. You still want it to be white, but based on where mine's sitting, this isn't just someone having a picnic, bringing the Brolly out every once in a while. This is getting some use to it, so it's looking a little bit tatty on the bottom there. As you can see, our table's now starting to dry now, and you're getting what I'm talking about here with the colour. So the final thing we're going to do, while that timber's looking a bit more like someone's actually put it together, we're just going to run a bit of wash over it to bring out the definition. Plunge your brush into water before you start. Add a bit of that wash down, even though it is quite diluted down. Now this one, we really only have to worry about going over the top. You don't need to go on the bottom with the wash. If you so chose, if you didn't have an umbrella, you could come along and stipple a little bit of a, maybe an olive drab, or maybe a little bit of an off-white or something to simulate the bird droppings and stuff that might be found on a public picnic table somewhere out there. And we'll leave the underneath as it is. We could run a bit more additional wash there, but it really isn't needed. Right, well, here we are. Cleaned up, ready to carry on. A couple of things to note. Our tables have dried and have dried nicely, and you can see that we've just got a little bit of difference in the shades and how it works, and I think they just look quite good. I'd even go over again, but we've got to leave it where we are because we haven't finished the entire scene. Our umbrellas are good to go, and I just want to point out I've just taken a bit of putty and run it on the inside. This is just to minimize the light bleed because I still want to be able to lift the lid off if someone wants to see inside, because I'm quite happy about that. In respect to location, petroleum depot behind us, and where we're still working on this. Now, this is actually going to be raised up slightly, and we're going to sort of have it nice and green, and that hasn't been done yet because I'm working on something else over here, which is going to be quite the surprise for you. That's all going to be happening very soon. But at the moment, just to finish the video off, I'm just going to sit it here temporarily wired up at the moment to a light hub, but we did leave facilities directly under the board here. So I don't know where the hole's going to go yet for it. So until that's done, because I think this is going to be built up using our styrofoam or something. So we'll leave that for the minute, but still, as you can see, coming around on the back, while you're not going to see it, I still think it's going to be good because they would have put signs in anyway, because rail traffic passing by, why wouldn't you have a sign there?
Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. I present to you the final product now with a few close-up shots. While this will be its permanent home, we still need to get the landscaping done.
The sun is now setting here on the batter up Chippy box, and so is the video. So let's just have a couple of quick pieces of video here. Now we obviously have a couple of young ladies who are just coming in just before it closes to pick up something. Maybe they're from the 60s, I don't know, could be 60s, 70s, who knows. I think they called these young ladies mods with their mini skirts and whatever. Someone's worked hard and has brought her purse in to get her $1 of mixed toffees. I have got something special planned for the illumination of the front, but that's a story for another day. No, it's not going to be neon lights or anything like that. We're trying to keep it more as a lunchtime sort of a place you pop into.
Well, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me in today's video. It's been an absolute pleasure to share with you the fun I've had using the AI. And as I've always mentioned, I'm not really someone that gets into the whole modeling and scratch building and all the different paints and all of that. So I just give it a red hot go just to try and create the scene the best I can. I think one of the best examples of that, and while it's still not finished, would probably be the cricket pitch. Probably one of my most fondest scenes that we actually created here. And while the view counts might not be as high as some others like the disused line, that was a lot more fun to build than what was going on here. Still, for all of the key scenes that you've seen, we'll keep revisiting things because I'm far from finished. If you might be able to see in the distance of the coastal scene, you'll notice that I've just finished painting some lampposts. We've still got to come back and do more there. So always plenty more to happen. For those of you that may not be so interested in the model railway itself, I am working on a few different projects with some of the toys at the moment, and we will be seeing some footage of that as we keep carrying on. In the meantime, as always, please do stay safe. Girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Toodles!